Hello and welcome back to my channel. I really feel like I should be saying hello MTV and welcome to my crib, but slightly different style of video for another time. Today I am not in a car or walking you around a car showing you how it works. Today is a slightly different video where I'm going to be talking to you about how maybe you could buy a car and talking about all the different funding methods available at the moment. Before I jump into today's video, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you aren't already. Right, let's get into it. I'd just like to make a quick disclaimer that this video is for entertainment purposes and advice purposes only. I am not a financial advisor and that this is literally just an opinion based video as opposed to factual, and that each funding method is absolutely fine for each and every different person out there. Okay, let's go. So I've worked in the motor trade for quite a while now, so I feel like my knowledge on financing, funding, cash, lease, hire purchase, you name it, is pretty good. I have a lot of people ask me, how should I buy this car? Do you think this is worth it? What's the interest rate like? What's your thoughts on this? So I thought I'd just do a sit down video and tell you my opinions on each and every funding method. There are four major funding methods, the first one being PCP, followed by hire purchase, the new kid on the block, which is leasing, and of course traditional cash. I'm going to go through each and every one of them today, give them all a brief synopsis, and then tell you my thoughts on them. So let's kick things off with the most popular funding method, which is PCP. PCP is also known as personal contract purchase, as it is an ownership agreement and probably, in my opinion, the best way to purchase a vehicle. So what is it and how does it work? You pay a deposit followed by a regular monthly instalment depending on your mileage and obviously how much you're putting into the agreement, followed by an optional final payment, also known as a guaranteed future value. With a PCP, you can pretty much depict how you want your contract to look. You can choose the mileage, the deposit you put in, to a certain extent how much you pay a month, and also how long you keep the car for. They are incredibly flexible. A lot of people also think that depending on how long you do the term for, whether that be 3 years, 4 years, however long, that you have to keep it for the whole duration. This is why I love PCP so much, because you actually don't have to. All you ever have to do is look at how much you owe on the finance at the time that you wish to get out of the agreement versus the value of the car. Let's use round numbers. Say, for example, you're 2 years into a 4-year agreement, your car is worth £10,000, but you only owe £8,000, you're in what we call equity. Of course, this can work in the opposite direction and mean that you could owe £8,000 but your car is worth £7,000, meaning you're in a negative equity situation. However, there are ways around that. So what kind of car should you be buying on PCP, new or used? Honestly, it really doesn't matter. In my opinion, I still think that it's the best way to buy, whether you're buying a brand new vehicle or a used one. There's nothing wrong with either of them and I am non-biased between the two. However, like I say, PCP is definitely the way to fund it. The reason why I feel so strongly about this is because it has a guaranteed future payment at the end. That guaranteed future value is basically the manufacturer or the brand that you're buying it from underwriting the vehicle for you for 3, 4, 5 years time, however long you decide to do the term for. Basically what they're saying is that, you know, worst comes to worst, or based upon the mileage that you've said you're going to do on this contract, we predict that vehicle to be worth X amount at the end of the agreement. For whatever reason, if the market crashes and your car is no longer worth what they've predicted it to be worth, that's their loss, because you can hand the car back and you don't have to take a hit. That's the reason why I love PCP so much. But equally, if the car is worth more than what the guaranteed future payment is at the end, you're in an equity situation. It's a bit of a win-win. Coffee break. Some big prestige manufacturers will offer interest rates as low as 2.9%, which is pretty much the same as a bank loan, to be honest with you. And used cars normally start at about 7.9, 8.9%. My one major piece of advice, do not get hung up on the interest rate. So many people will be like, oh, 8.9, blimey, that's high. No, it's not. It's really not. And it won't actually make a lot of difference to your monthly instalment. You'd be surprised. It is really minimal. It's really not a lot. And if you're happy with the monthly payment, then forget about the interest rate. Of course, you know, there is a limit where the interest can get too high, and that for me would probably be anything over 10%. One of the most popular questions I get asked about PCP is, well, I'm going to hand it back at the end anyway, I might as well just lease, it's so much cheaper. Is it? Is it that much cheaper? You're never going to own that car. You're essentially renting it. I'll come back to leasing later in the video, but right now, in answer to that question for PCP, my advice would be PCP is an ownership agreement. You own that car. On the V5, you are the owner. So that means you can hand it back whenever you like, you can, with a certain extent, you can change it at any point, you can up your mileage on certain contracts. You know, at the end, you have the option to buy it. With a lease, you don't have any of those options. It is very much signed, sealed, done, dusted. You want to give it back at 3 years into a 4-year agreement? Okay, great, you have to pay off the remainder. That's not how it works with PCP. With a PCP, there's always ways of getting you out of it. That's the difference between leasing and a PCP. Okay, speaking of ownership agreements, that takes me to my next funding method, which is, of course, hire purchase. So hire purchase, of course it is an ownership agreement, a bit like a PCP, except without the optional final payment at the end, as there is no balloon. So essentially you pay a slightly higher monthly instalment with a deposit, sometimes without a deposit, and then at the end of the term you own the vehicle fully. This really appeals to a lot of people, particularly our cash customers. So normally people that are like, yeah, do you know what, I want to cash buy that car. Well, rather than tying up all of this liquid cash that you've got sitting in your bank account, you're going to put all of that into a depreciating asset. Why would you do that? Pay for it monthly. Work out how much the car's depreciating by monthly. Normally it's around £200 to £500 a month, depending on, of course, the car, but just to give you a rough idea. So if you're paying anywhere between £200 and £500 a month, you're technically just paying the depreciation for that car monthly until you own it at the end. Seems like the most logical idea, right? So hire purchase does not give you an optional final payment, which in turn means you don't get a guaranteed future value. It's not the end of the world, as hire purchase traditionally appeals to the demographic of somebody who wants to keep their car for a long period of time. I would also recommend hire purchase for sort of low level purchases, anything sort of sub £10,000. It's a great way to own a car over a long period of time. And the thing is with hire purchase as well, is you can do them over slightly longer terms than you can on a PCP. And with a hire purchase, you can do 60 months agreements, which is a 5-year term. It just allows you to spread the cost slightly longer and have a slightly more comfortable monthly payment. Hire purchase is pretty easy to explain, so I feel like I'm done on that one. If you have any questions about it though, as with any of these funding methods, please feel free to ask me in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer them for you. Okay, let's get into the new kid on the block, which is leasing. So leasing, do I like it? Do I think it's worth it? How does it work? All that jazz. It's pretty new, and I think a lot of people get drawn in by how cheap they are monthly, but I'll give you my honest opinions on it. Do I like leasing? Yes, I do. I think it's great for certain people. I don't think it's for everyone. So how leasing works, very similar to a PCP, however, no optional final payment, no option to own the vehicle. You are simply renting that car. You are leasing that vehicle. So you pay a deposit. Sometimes you don't have to, but normally each leasing company has their own rules, but they normally like 1 to 3 payments up front. So deposit, monthly installment, hand it back. However, there is a mileage stipulation, a term stipulation, and whether you'd like it maintained or not. So what I mean by a mileage stipulation is if you say you're doing 8,000 miles a year, you really need to make sure you're doing 8,000 miles a year, or they will penalise you and charge you if you go over prorated annually at the end of that agreement. Okay, so term stipulation, you can choose 3 years, 4 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, 12 months, very, very flexible in that respect. However, if you sign to say you're taking it for 4 years, you're having that car for 4 years. It's so difficult to get out of it. There is some clauses in certain contracts, and I know that some are better than others, where you can pay to get out of it or pay a fee or whatnot, but it's quite difficult. It normally means that you do have to keep it for the full term. There is a maintenance package on a lease, which means that it will cover you for your tyres, your servicing, your tax, can't think what else it covers, but it pretty much just sorts you out for the whole time that you've got the car, which I think is fantastic. A lot of leasing companies do offer this, and I think it's a really great option. So do I think it's worth it? I do for certain people. I do for people that know they're going to keep their car for that set period of time. However, a lot of my friends, my family, a lot of people that I know tend to get bored of their cars quite quickly. Families who just need a comfortable 4-wheel drive, a big 4x4 that they can do the school run in, and they know they're going to keep it for 4 years. Absolutely perfect for somebody like that. For somebody young who wants to change their car all the time, or who has got attracted to that deal by the monthly instalment, I'd really think about it, just because there is so many clauses. But I don't know personally enough about leasing, as I haven't sold much of it before. So, you know, if you think I'm wrong, please tell me. I'm more than happy to listen. But there is a couple of other leasing options, and that is flexible leasing. I think it's the best thing since sliced bread. My friend Tish, she does it, and honestly it's incredible. You're essentially renting a vehicle but at a really good price. There's a company called Sogo, which is a flexible leasing company. This is not sponsored, it's not an ad, but my friend, like I say, Tish, she uses them. She's got an above 595 convertible. It's absolutely incredible. She pays a really low monthly instalment, which is sub £300 a month, and she basically keeps it for however long she wants, but you just pay it monthly like you would for like an old mobile phone. I just think that's great. There's a couple of other companies that offer leasing contracts who I'm a really big fan of. Select Car Leasing, pretty good. I see them advertised quite a lot. Their deals seem to be the most competitive. There's a couple of others, but Select Car Leasing and Sogo seem to be my top 2 favourite, so that I look on myself at offers and what they've got going on. So that takes me to traditional old-fashioned cash. This is a really difficult one. I said that I'm not really biased towards any sort of funding method. However, cash just, for me, logically does not make sense. And I don't mean like cash, I mean putting a debit card in a card machine, or like basically an outright purchase is what I'm trying to say. But anything sort of sub 7 grand, I'd probably cash buy. I have just cash bought. I just bought a runaround Fiat 500 for about 2.5 grand. So anything sort of sub £7,000, yeah, I'd probably buy it. Just because I feel like it's already taken its depreciation, so I'm not gonna lose too much on it. Anything over that sort of point, for me, doesn't make sense. You might have the money there to go and buy it, and that's great if you do, but why would you tie up all of that liquid cash into something that's depreciating? I personally don't understand it. However, I do understand the kind of person that just says, I just want to buy it and I don't want any monthly payments. That's fine. Then why don't you hire purchase it so that you own it at the end, but take the money that you're going to pay for it monthly out of the savings? And people will say, well, that's exactly the same as cash buying it. It is, but just over a longer period of time. And if you, for whatever reason, needed some liquid cash, you've got it sitting there rather than got it in a car that's depreciating. I've always said this, even if I won the lottery and I won the Euro Millions, I would still PCP my car. I would still finance it because I want the guaranteed future payment at the end. So no, I don't hate cash purchases, but personally I can't make it make sense financially because you just take such a hit. I really hope that was helpful, because I have so many people ask me these questions all the time about funding and interest rates and everything else in between. So I hope this gave you a bit of an idea as to what funding method might suit you the best. They're all absolutely fine, either way that you decide to fund, they're all fine. But if you need any advice on anything further, please feel free to ask me some questions down below. I'm more than happy to try and answer them, or you can pop me a message on Instagram. I'm more than happy to do that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it or you found it helpful, and subscribe if you aren't already. But for now, I shall see you next time. Bye guys.